Hello and welcome. Today we're talking about the perfect movement, how to move as much water as possible with optimum energy consumption. So the first step is obviously the catch, which will be broken down into 3 phases. The first phase will be to control the entry of the arm. So what does that mean? What it means here, if I go back a little further, is to bring your fingers in first, then your forearm, then your elbow, to be able to control your arm. And so controlling your arm makes it easier to engage the hand, the forearm, the arm, by dislocating the shoulder to engage it more easily far in front of the shoulder line, to succeed in phase 2, which is to orient the crook of the elbow towards the bottom of the pool, to then succeed in bending the forearm on the arm to be perpendicular, or at least as perpendicular as possible to the surface of the water. Right? And that's how we'll be able to move a good volume of water backwards towards the feet, to move, reaction action, forwards. So bending the forearm over the arm is pretty easy to do. What's going to be difficult, on the other hand, is phase 2, which is really putting the crook of the elbow towards the bottom of the pool. Why? Because if it's towards the ceiling, you're not going to be able to bend the elbow where you want, which has only 1 degree of freedom. So you're going to bend it directly upwards, even if it never happens exactly like that. But you're going to bend the elbow in any case in the wrong direction, or keep the straight arm like I see many people do it in my analysis. So one thing that can help a lot is turning the palm of the hand and the crook of the elbow at the same time, like one and the same block. All you have to do is put the palm of your hand and the crook of your elbow to one side. Then you can turn your whole arm as a single unit, and at the same time put the palm of your hand and the crook of your elbow towards the bottom of the pool. And even if you don't achieve a perfect catch at first, you'll manage to bend a minimum just by doing this internal rotation exercise with half magic palm, as Roman Chuck does here, or even with magic palm. Some of my students do just as well with those. It's going to be up to each individual, to his or her feeling, but the idea is really to turn the arm in a single block to simplify this internal rotation. And then, as I was saying, all you have to do is bend your forearm over your upper arm, and what usually happens is that we don't take enough time to do it, we don't take enough time to flex, and so we want to pull right away. And so, of course, if we want to pull quickly, what happens is that we've done just about that. Then you start pulling and the catch is clearly not built. The hand and forearm are not oriented perpendicular to the surface of the water, with the hand vertical here at the elbow. And the question that often comes up is whether you should have an ultra high catch with the elbow close to the surface or a slightly lower catch. The idea remains the same, to take water far ahead, in front of the shoulder line. It will depend on your mobility and your pain. Do you have bad pain or not? Apply the no pain rule. If there's no bad pain, you can have a high catch. There's nothing to worry about. Repeat several sessions to see what happens in the medium term, and then you can decide whether or not to stick with this technique of high catch. Otherwise, do a low catch. So the best thing to do is to test either with a high elbow, close to the surface, a little lower than your shoulder, like Florian Wellbrock here, or with an even lower elbow. The only difference is that you're going to go a little deeper, you're going to have a little harder water, but if you're more comfortable with a little more depth, just keep that technique. Take the one that you feel best. Let's move on to step 2, which is the momentum, the moment when the hand goes vertical here, below your shoulder. What does it mean? It means that after you've built the catch, you'll be positioned as if your arm, forearm and hand were on a wall of water. You can test putting your hand, forearm and arm on a wall at home. This is where you have the most propulsive surfaces, correctly oriented towards your feet to push as much water mass as possible backwards. It's also where you have the most power, because passing your hand here at the vertical of your shoulder is where you have the most momentum, the easiest acceleration, because if your hand, instead of being here, passes a little to the outside, well, you'll have to put more power, so you'll spend more energy for the same propulsion compared to a hand exactly at the vertical of your shoulder. And so, to feel that your hand is passing vertically over your shoulder, to feel that your body is passing over it, because freestyle is translated by crawl in French. So it's your body that really needs to have this sensation of passing over the propulsive arm stroke. You're going to have to succeed here in getting your hand to pass there, and something that works well is closing one eye and keeping one eye open. So you keep your left eye open, if it's your right hand there, if it's your right arm working. And if you can see, by closing your right eye, if you can see that your hand is passing under your body with your left eye, well, it's good. That means that the hand has a good chance of passing, not necessarily exactly in the right place, but with an 80%, 90% chance of being in the right place, i.e. under your body, and that your body is passing over your arm stroke. So it's obviously in a better position, and from that moment on, you can accelerate the water more intensely. Because you have strength, your arm is optimally placed, because your hand is really vertical and your body is really above your propulsive stroke. Because in the end, if you can't see your hand, it means it's on the side, and if it's on the side, you're spending more power and therefore more energy. So how do you find the right depth of momentum in your hand? Well, it's simply a question of your catch depth. If you have a high catch like Wellbrock or like Ian Thorpe here, what's going to happen? It's going to happen that your elbow, it's going to be at about 90 degrees when you pass the hand vertically below the shoulder here. Your elbow is at 90 degrees. If you have a catch that's a little lower, well, your elbow is going to be at more than 90 degrees. Quite simply, your hand will be a little lower. Because what you need to understand is that once you've catched, your elbow, your forearm and your hand translate backwards until you pass the momentum, and then the roll, which has already started since the catch, continues. So it's inevitably this that brings the elbow and the hand up close to the body to then move towards key position number 3. Now let's move on to step 3. In this step you have the end of the push, which breaks down into key position number 3 and a faster extension. Let's start with the faster extension. Now I'll do you at normal speed. The idea, as I was saying, on momentum is where you can accelerate strongly because that's where you're well placed, that's where you have the muscle power you need. And then, since you have fewer oriented propulsive surfaces, because on P3 here, i.e. when your arm is close to your body, you only have your forearm and hand. So you can push even harder because you've simply got less water to move, and this allows you to finish your movement with acceleration. So you start slower after the catch, accelerate on P2 and finish even harder on this final push to move the last of the water towards the feet and move forward. And so a question that often comes up is, how do you go from this key position number 3, the elbow close to the body before the extension, to everything that happens before? So from the catch to the momentum up to here, well, in fact, you have to understand that on the catch, your elbow is going to move out, it's going to go slightly outside. Your hand is going to come up to the vertical here of your elbow. So inevitably the hand will move out too. Then your elbow, it will move out more. He's going to go on the side there on P2. The hand, as we saw just before, really comes back to the vertical of the shoulder. Okay. And then the elbow will return this time close to the body so that the upper arm is in contact here with the body, because that's where you'll have the most propulsive amplitude. It's also where you'll have the most power to push the last masses of water backwards. And so in the end, the elbow makes a C. He moves away to momentum, to key position number 2, and then back for key position number 3 before the extension. And the hand, finally, moves aside at the start to pick up masses of water deep on the catch. It then returns to the vertical of the body, even if we say it's the body that passes over it. Then the hand will once again move out to emerge at thigh level. The idea is to touch the palm of the hand with the thigh so that the little finger comes out of the water first. It's really the best way to get a good feel for the end of the push, to have it well placed, because at least there you have a tactile reference point. The tactile reference point is the most reliable, the most representative, and the most precise way of structuring your swim efficiently. So you have tactile cues, you have visual cues as we saw just before, but you also have cues in terms of muscular tension, sensations. As I said, the fact was to push harder and harder. You can also simply feel that the water is harder and harder as you move. So from the catch, where it starts to push, it starts to propel, where at the momentum level it's even a notch higher, where you can send even more intensity, and at the end of the push where you move the last masses of water. So you must feel that on your hand, on your forearm, there's more and more pressure. And so in the end, what's going to be difficult is to really keep this blade built, this hand, this forearm, this arm, well oriented from step number 1 of the catch to this end of the push, this slightly more intense extension. And that's what Ian Thorpe managed to do excellently 20 years ago. Because clearly he's the one of those who's going to best respect the catch, the momentum, that slightly stronger end of the push and that big acceleration. Because this big acceleration over the long term is going to be your only way of progress. This means that you're going to increase your amplitude as you progress. And at some point you're going to pull the water harder and harder. And your underwater travel time is only going to get shorter. And your glide time, your non-propulsion time, will only increase. And that's what happens with these high-level swimmers too. When they swam 10 or 20 seconds slower on 400, on 800, well, they were making more strokes per length. Now that they're going faster, they're doing even less, because their propulsion time has been reduced and their glide time has increased. On that note, I'll let you tell me in comments for you which swimmer has the perfect movement or which swimmer you want me to analyze. And on that note, I wish you excellent progress as usual, and I'm posting the link to the Magic Palm and also to a session for working outside the water with bands to get a better feel for all those key positions. Because they're not easy to feel directly in the water, as I was saying, there aren't many tactile cues, and the fact of feeling them outside the water really helps you to do things better in the water.